18 hours, that is how long it took.
Say that again.
Nearly 18 hours of talks, then a deal framework emerged.
18 hours of U.S. and Iran negotiators in the same building, working through the night.
Welcome to the News Pod. I am Alex.
And I am Sarah, and this story is moving fast.
The U.S. and Iran have agreed on a roadmap toward a final nuclear deal. 60 days. That is the window they have set themselves.
60 days to resolve one of the most complicated disputes on the planet.
The talks happened at Bergenstock, Switzerland. A joint statement was issued by mediating parties Qatar and Pakistan following the conclusion of the first round.
Qatar and Pakistan together as co-mediators. That pairing alone tells you how unusual this moment is.
Let me set the scene first, because the backstory here matters enormously.
Please, because a lot of listeners may be asking, how did we even get here?
In early March, Iran-backed Hezbollah fired rockets at Israel. This was retaliation. It followed U.S. and Israeli strikes that killed Iran's supreme leader.
Hold on. Iran's supreme leader was killed in those strikes.
Correct, and that triggered Hezbollah's involvement. Lebanon was pulled into the broader conflict almost immediately after.
That is genuinely shocking, and it explains why Lebanon is so central to what came out of these talks.
Exactly. Which brings us to one of the most significant pieces of this agreement. The parties agreed to establish what they are calling a deconfliction cell.
A deconfliction cell, what is that exactly?
It involves the U.S., Iran, and Lebanon, facilitated by Qatar and Pakistan. Its specific purpose is to ensure adherence to the termination of military operations in Lebanon.
So it is a joint mechanism to keep the ceasefire in Lebanon from collapsing.
That is the goal. And Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi described it on X as the first real test of the agreement.
The first real test, he said that publicly.
He did. Which tells you something. Iran is not treating this as a done deal. They are watching whether the deconfliction cell actually works before trusting the broader framework.
Okay, but what does that mean for people on the ground in Lebanon right now?
It means there is now a formal structure. 3 parties. A facilitating mechanism, designed specifically to prevent accidental escalation or a breakdown of the ceasefire.
That structure did not exist before this week.
It did not. Now let me talk about who was actually in the room, because this is where it gets interesting.
Wait, who did Washington actually send?
The U.S. delegation was led by Vice President J.D. Vance, alongside Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner.
Vance, Witkoff, and Kushner. That is a very senior team.
That is a statement of intent. You do not send the vice president unless you are serious.
So who was across the table from them?
The Iranian delegation was led by Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament.
Not the foreign minister, the parliament speaker.
Araghchi was involved in communications around the talks, but Ghalibaf led the delegation. Al Jazeera confirmed his role.
I want to understand the structure of what was agreed, because a roadmap and a final deal are very different things.
Let me push back on that framing slightly, because the structure they built is actually more detailed than the word roadmap suggests.
Walk me through it.
A high-level committee was established. It provides political oversight of the entire mediation. Chief negotiators report to it regularly.
And there are working groups underneath that.
3 of them, one on nuclear issues, one on sanctions, one on dispute resolution. Each working group has its own track.
That is a serious architecture. That is not just a press release.
Correct. And there's one more piece that I think is being underreported. The U.S. and Iran set up a direct communication line.
A direct line between Washington and Tehran.
Specifically to avoid incidents and miscommunication in the Strait of Hormuz.
The Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point for global oil supply.
A direct line there matters enormously. One misread naval encounter in that strait could unravel everything.
That is genuinely significant that this line did not already exist in some formal capacity.
And yet here we are. Now I do want to flag something that complicates the triumphant narrative here.
Hold on, there was a hitch?
Iranian media reported that Tehran refused to return to 4-way talks at one point during the negotiations. After a break, citing public threats from President Trump and ongoing fighting in Lebanon.
So the talks almost broke down mid-session.
That is what Iranian media reported. U.S. officials disputed that account. So we have two versions of what happened inside that room.
18 hours, and at some point it nearly collapsed.
That needs context. We do not know the full picture. Both sides have incentives to shape the narrative here, but the tension was real enough that it got reported.
And yet they still got to a joint statement. Qatar and Pakistan put their names on it.
They did, which is why even the skeptics are calling this encouraging. The national news cited officials describing the outcome as encouraging progress.
Encouraging but fragile. That seems like the honest read.
That is the honest read. And Araghchi basically said the same thing when he called Lebanon the first real test.
So what happens now? Where does this go from here?
Technical talks are continuing for the remainder of this week. Still at the Bergenstock Resort. Working groups are meeting. The 60-day clock is running.
60 days. That deadline is the thing to watch.
It is, because if the working groups on nuclear and sanctions cannot reach convergence within that window, the roadmap stalls. And stalled roadmaps in this region tend to go backwards.
And the Lebanon deconfliction cell is the immediate pressure test. Any incident there in the next few weeks could destabilize everything else.
Which is why Araghchi flagged it so publicly. He is essentially putting down a marker. If Lebanon burns, the deal burns with it.
The 60-day window, the Strait of Hormuz hotline, the Lebanon cell, 3 things to track simultaneously.
3 things that are all connected. Pull one thread and the others move.
This is one of those stories where the framework sounds hopeful, and the details remind you exactly how hard this is.
That is the right way to hold it. Hope and hard-headedness at the same time.
That is the news pod for today. If this story matters to you, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
We are back tomorrow. Stay informed.